security, so if you want to talk web app, you're in the right place. If not, we're going to talk about web app anyway, so appreciate you coming out. I come from a weird background. I went to school to be a music teacher. I know some of the folks in here I know already know that, which is getting a more difficult way to introduce myself because the CISO of Equifax was music, right? But she wasn't a music teacher. She was performance. That's the difference. But I got into security, specifically IT, because I wanted to start a family, and it paid. And I don't like the administration side of teaching. My wife has been doing it for years. She's a saint. I can't do it. I like doing this stuff. So I got help desk, hardware experience. I worked my way through security, and I'm still, like 2 weeks ago, I just moved to a new company. It's a cool field for me to be in because I get bored. I want to do new things. I want to dig into something. I'm with a company now that I get to focus on identity, and I get to play on all my pen testing experience, like the stuff Dave's talking about. What should users be doing as a pen tester? I'm like, that's exactly right. If you can see what the people are doing, or what the person's account is doing that they shouldn't be doing, you would shut pen testers down. So I'm getting my head around that right now, but it's nice to be able to geek out on one thing. But I come from an ops background. I come from a consulting background, and I really dig web, especially from a pen test perspective. Pen testing systems is okay. I'm terrible at social engineering. I hate lying to people. It's really it's just a personal thing, and I can't get over it. And I'm glad we got people like Dave and Chris Nickerson, and that there are folks who are driving the good things in that space, because I can't touch it. But on the web side, to be able to sit down at an application that's complex, that's designed to do a bunch of different things that ultimately the end users really dig and the companies really like, because it keeps the end users engaged. There's just a much larger attack surface and more opportunities for an attacker to get in. So I've studied up on the web app side, and I keep coming back to OWASP. But I want to frame kind of what we're talking about before I get into it in more detail. You've heard the compliance versus security argument, I'm sure, over and over. We're doing it because somebody said we had to do it, or we're doing it because we want things to keep working. Because we said we had to do it is a great way to get budget. When I worked at Abercrombie, my job was created because of PCI. I personally am grateful, as much as I hate PCI, that it got me the job, because I was able to go in and do security. And when you drill down into web app testing, taking PCI as an example, there's specific language in there that says you have to test internally and externally, and you have to test systems and applications, which is going to drive some of the opportunity you have to go to leadership and say, give me time, give me training, give me budget, so that I can hit our apps because somebody said we had to. And you can really do the real thing, the security thing. Bug bounty programs have also been having a huge impact on application security tools and attack opportunities. Anybody here do BugCrowd, HackerOne? If you want some cash on the side, you have open invitations from hundreds of companies to hack them and get paid as a bounty hunter, right? So bug bounty programs, I've seen companies do some really cool things. Instead of hiring a company to come in once a year and do some web app security, they have people hacking their stuff all the time. And so there's this constant iteration of oh, you found something, let's fix it. But from a defender perspective, it means that web application attack techniques and tools that keep getting uploaded to GitHub are coming out at a much faster pace now, which is good for pen testers, bad for defenders, and really bad for companies that aren't doing the right things around app security before they publish these apps on the internet. And then customer and client expectations. I spent a couple of years at OSU doing third-party risk management. So somebody wants to do business with the university. They say, pay us money, OSU, and we'll give you our cool thing. And my team would say, we don't think you're doing security as well as we expect you to. Let's have a conversation about that. And I wasn't allowed to scan their stuff. I wasn't allowed, definitely not allowed to do any pen testing, to do any of the deep dive AppSec stuff that's really fun. But open source intelligence gathering was definitely on the table. And it's very awkward, but kind of rewarding. When somebody's coming to the university saying, we want to do business with you, and we do our job and go back and say, first, can you explain to us why you're selling Viagra on your website? To which they say, what do you mean? And we say, well, through our analysis, it looks like you've been compromised for months. You've been there was a web page on your site that somebody put there that your admins have no idea about. And when you tell me that you're doing web application security testing and penetration testing and vulnerability management, I call bullshit, because that's a fair finding. So if you're in that position where your organization is getting hit up with these third-party requirements, the big companies saying, we'll do business with you, prove to us that your stuff is secure, that's also driving some of the opportunity to take a closer look at our web apps. In the app space, is anybody in here a developer? I dig it. All right, so positive testing versus negative testing. Do you use that terminology, that language? I'm not a developer. I can read code, I can break code. I'm teaching myself some Python game dev right now. I'm trying to build up to like some C# side project. But I have all the respect in the world for developers because you guys put up with some crazy stuff. My understanding, outsider looking in, positive testing is there's a zip code field, right? I live in Hilliard. So if I'm on an app and it asks me for my zip code, I type in 43026. It says, oh, you must be in Hilliard, Ohio. Yes, that's a positive test. I enter anticipated input, and I receive the expected output. Or expected input, expected output. But negative testing is all the fun, sexy security stuff, right? What's your zip code? My zip code is 257 random characters, including numbers, letters, and non-alpha. Well, why in the hell would you put that in the zip code field? That's not what a normal person would do. Yeah, but it's what security people would do. We want to know what happens when we throw unexpected input at your application. Can I get it to barf up information about the underlying framework? Can I get it to throw it on screen that the developers forgot to turn off? And now I'm profiling your application, right? I know what your back end is, which gives me, oh, I'm going to go to this SQL injection cheat sheet, and I know exactly what to throw at your app through these web forms because of that miss. Negative testing is where we live from a security space. And that's what this framework I'm going to be sharing talks about. And the other benefit I found from this framework is if you're a developer, you can bake this into your QA process. Use as much as you want. And then you can start to add some of that negative testing. You can start to add the security testing without a lot of overhead. Also coming out of the retail space where I always had to fight for budget. Always. The OWASP Offensive Web Testing Framework is free. It uses a lot of free and open source tools under the hood. But what it means is you don't have to fight for budget to get something you could be using right away. And if you are a researcher or a pen tester, it's also just a good thing to round out your tool set and bring some automation to what you do. But the goal here is to get to testing always and to get away from having to build and maintain our own stuff. It's one of OWASP's, a flagship project. OWASP has projects that get more attention than others, and OWTF is one that has a lot of love, which means that people are still developing it, they're still adding to it. If you're a developer and you're security minded, you can have a huge impact by chiming into this project. If you see something you don't like, or if you see something that doesn't work, you can make it better by contributing out there through GitHub. So, the OWTF Offensive Web Testing Framework was built with the three tools in mind. So the OWASP testing guide, which I love to no end. The PTES, Penetration Testing Execution Standard. And then one of the NIST special publications, that and there's a little bit of OSS-TMM, the Open Source Security Testing Methodology Manual. All these resources are very detailed technical documents on how to test specific conditions and then how to implement some kind of testing workflow. And the OWTF takes advantage of all this stuff. It's a shoulders of giants tool, right? All these things are incredibly helpful. Let's just put them all together and help the app dev, AppSec population. The OWASP testing project is something like 140 unique application security tests that OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, recommends you test in your web applications. The only thing you take away from today is I need to show my developers the OWASP testing guide. You will be launching your application security program ahead years. I'm still incredibly disappointed that it's not more commonplace. It's on revision 4, and where the OWASP top 10 is, here are 10 things you need to worry about. The OWASP testing guide is, here's how to test for the top 10 and so much more. And it breaks the test down into test categories where you can go through, pick and choose what you want, and then run with that. When I was working consulting and doing web application penetration tests, this was my checklist for the intelligence gathering, vulnerability analysis, some of the leading up to the exploitation piece. I would go through these tests to help me get my head around what does this app do, what capabilities did the developers bring to the table, right? Am I seeing a lot of evidence that they built security in, or am I seeing some gaps? And then once I got through the bulk of the testing guide, I would flip and go into the attack and pen stage. So tremendous help there. The NIST special publication, Technical Guide to Information Security Testing and Assessment, is more about process. It's more about flow. So NIST has guidance on how to do some security testing, and this document helps you build the workflow around that. Good? I'm wearing one.
Okay.
Is that?
The other one is the house is someplace.
That's all right. Everybody can hear me okay, right? I'll just keep yelling.
This one is the house.
All right. Yeah, we'll pass that. I mentioned I went to school to be a music teacher. It meant I had to study an instrument for 4 years. I studied voice. So if I can't project in a room like this, my professors would be very disappointed. Well, I'm sure they are, but that's another life. This special publication is about testing, about workflow, and then the PTES, Penetration Testing Execution Standard, is guidance that some of the people like Dave, Chris Nickerson, I see their names come up when I look at this. At one point, Dave was running the website on a server in his basement. I don't know if he's put it out in the cloud, but it provides more of a flow to the penetration test process. Hopefully, right, the intent was to get away from the, hey, I need a pen test. Okay, I'll run a Nessus scan, I'll run an Nmap scan, I'll flip you the results and call it a day, right? The penetration testing standard gets into doing the recon, doing the vulnerability analysis, doing the threat modeling, and encouraging people to have a more in-depth, just a better quality approach to penetration testing. So OWTF takes guidance and information from all these resources, and the team used that to build out their tool. And I'll tell you too, with this slide deck, the teacher in me likes to put stuff online after. So there's a lot of information in here that I'm just going to kind of breeze over. But I've got a SlideShare account, and I just started a speaker deck. So if you hit me up on LinkedIn, I'm going to tweet after I get out of here today and upload this. I wanted to wait until today before I put it online, but all the details about what commands to run, how to install it, get it singing on Kali, you can hit those up after. So it's all in here, but I'm going to breeze through. So tech specs, the one thing I will mention, if you've got Kali Linux installed, or even a Kali VM, This is crazy simple to get up and running. I say that one of my friends tried it, and he was bumping into an issue. He and I haven't hooked up to talk about what he was seeing, but what I'm going to show you at the end of the talk is on one of my Kali versions. Under the hood, the pieces of OWTF, right, the tools that they've built into this framework that give you the most value right out of the gate is this short list. So curl is just command line. Let me talk over HTTP, a bunch of gets and posts. Arachne, or Arachni, depending on how you pronounce it, open source web application security scanner. W3AF, the web app, what is it? Application attack framework. It's its own thing. Skipfish and Dirbuster, just a couple of tools that do some scanning, some analysis, and Arachne in particular, like by itself, is fantastic. It's great for finding cross-site scripting, some injection-based flaws. It's not going to be as robust as like a NetSparker or an Akinetics or any of these other dynamic application security testing tools, but it gives you a lot of information, right? It gives you a good foundation. But what makes OWTF even sexier is it has all this other stuff kind of tucked in there. So when you install it, you've got access to all these tools that as you're finding vulnerabilities that might represent an actual attack vector that a criminal could use to take advantage of to compromise back-end systems, back-end databases, then you can dig deeper and you can validate whether or not it's really there, a false positive, or if you want to go on a tangent, right? You find a non-standard service, you can make Nmap calls and look for other available services. So it's all built in to help you be more effective more quickly. The one last thing I wanted to mention before I talk about usage is these concepts around testing. If you've done any kind of application security, any kind of penetration testing, these terms, these concepts are already going to be familiar with you. Passive does not show up in the logs. How many folks in the room heard about Autosploit when that tool dropped? Right? Super sexy, super scary. Autosploit makes calls to Shodan, finds available services, makes calls, I think it's like CVE details, to look for vulnerabilities based on the information that's in Shodan. It's all open source information, or OSINT. And then it goes right into Metasploit and tries to launch Metasploit modules against targets from this list. So it goes from open source intelligence gathering to exploitation, which negates your blue team's ability to detect this activity, right? There's nothing that's going to show up that's going to let them know this is happening. I'm still on the fence of the value of the tool. Very valuable from a criminal perspective. The value from a perspective, maybe scare people. But it's a scary tool and it's capable. I mean, it's available. But passive testing is that staying off the systems. I don't want to show but anybody that I'm coming in. Semi-passive looks like regular user traffic. So you could argue that tools like HT-Track that go through and just hit every web page on a website and download it fit in that semi-passive space. It's not malicious, right? I'm just visiting web pages. I just happen to be downloading everything I find so I can make an offline copy of the app I'm analyzing. Semi-passive may or may not trip alerts. Active, for an organization that's taken time to put in some foundational information security logging and monitoring controls, active should let somebody know that something's going on. An Nmap scan across the entire 65,000 port range should absolutely trigger an email or SMS to somebody. That's an example of active analysis. So when I talk about the tools here, or the plugins within OWTF, that's how they're broken out. So the workflow that, when I'm talking to devs and I'm talking about building this into the QA process, the workflow is still pretty much the same, although pen testing, you've probably already got your own workflow, especially if you're working in a team testing environment. But you fire up OWTF, and within the UI, if you want to start in the UI, I'm sure there's command line stuff that I haven't even played around with yet. But you can go in the UI and you can add the targets that you're interested in testing. Once you add them, you fire up the scan, and it's going to go under the hood, and it's going to run multiple tools against your web application based on the types of tests that you indicated that you want to run. I did Code Mesh up in Sandusky. I was up there in January, which was fun for me because it was all devs, right? Everybody in the room was comes from a development background. In order to show the room some of the tool, I actually ran some passive tests against the Code Mesh conference website. So that way I'm not putting anybody on the spot and I'm not attacking anything, but I'm showing actual information that the tool is able to pull back without breaking any rules of engagement or non-existent rules of engagement. So you start to scan with the web UI. You throw in one or more web apps, URLs, let it run the tools based on the plugins you choose. And then there is a human element of analyzing the findings to see whether or not you want to dive deeper, you need to take action on anything, and that's where all of the other tools that are baked in comes in really handy there. And then OWTF provides you with the ability to validate. So if you're a pen tester, this to me is where the biggest bang for the $0 comes into play. All the other tools and commands that you need to figure out, like what parameters should I throw at it, it gives you all of that right out of the box so that you can just copy paste that into the command line. And as somebody who, the example I use is installing wireless network adapters on Linux. Anybody ever done that? And I'm seeing people with hair nodding, so you've done better than I. It's incredibly maddening. And when all you want to do is hack, when all you want to do is get into the testing, to be caught up in the minutia is the biggest pain in the ass. And that's one of the things that this tool takes out, the validation. It gives you a lot of that right away. And then if you don't have, like if you're not using Dratus or one of the other reporting frameworks, the tool's got a lot of reporting functionality built in that you can then kick something out and give it to a client if you're a pen tester. Or if you're working in like the QA piece of the whole web app dev process, you might be able to kick out either an OWTF kind of nice pretty report or native reports from the specific tools that found the things you were looking for, and upload that into the bug tracking system so that the developers have all the information they need to make a determination about what they want to do with regard to this bug or this vulnerability. Installation, like I said, if you get Kali, go with the Bootstrap script. Again, when this is online, you'll have all this. I want to emphasize that the Bootstrap script is the way to go. It saves a lot of time in getting this up and running. Git clone, I mean, if you want to play around with it, go for it. It's just going to be more time consuming. And if you're a fan of Docker, anybody using Docker? So if you wanted to go the Docker route, they've got info out on GitHub that might help you be even more effective more quickly. Documentation. This is where I'm going to start skipping through. But I did want to mention docs.owtf.org is where the original team has put together their guidance. It's light, but it's a good starting point. I mean, the README out on GitHub is one thing, but if you want to go out to their docs website, you're going to get a little more context, a little more detail around how the tool works. Starting the tool, now this is important. Every time you run the tool, there's an expectation that you're running the tool in a directory that's dedicated to your test or your engagement. If you're a pen tester and it's like 2018 client, right? However you track your different client engagements, create a unique folder for that. If you're testing internally as part of that QA process, it'll be more complicated. I mean, it's easy enough to figure out, but you need to have a unique directory because all the output, everything the tool spits out is going to get dropped here. And if you try to run it outside of a unique directory, or if you try to run it from the desktop, it can screw up your, it just makes things messy. Then you have to create a Python virtual environment, which is the source ~/bashrc _ work on OWTF. When you create that Python virtual environment, you run the database startup script, and then you run the tool. If you don't get these steps right, it doesn't work. So just make sure you've got your head around step 1, 2, 3, 4. And then after you've got the tool fired up, you can log in localhost port 8009, and you're up and running. The one other thing I wanted to mention, this one made me so happy. It clicked with me this morning. It's hard to see here on the screen, but that's what it looks like after you fire it up in the command line. And the very last line says, press Control-C when you've spawned a shell. And then I think it's got a winking smiley face. I like that it offers up that kind of encouragement. Sometimes, right, it's nice to have somebody just saying, hey, go out there and pwn a system. Have fun. You'll do great today. And it's a stupid little thing, but it clicked with me this morning and brought a smile to my face. After you fire up the tool and go into the UI, you're going to see this screen where you get to add your targets. When you plug in a URL, like I said, I'll show you the www.codemesh.org. It's going to call out, do an NS lookup to find the IP address, and then load it over here so that you can see is this definitely the site you want to test. If you're testing internally and you're playing around with your like your local DNS config, so that you plug in the website name, but it's actually pointing to a test instance. This gives you that ability to do validation. And then when you've got your website added, your target app, it's weird. You select the target and then you click run, which is just a design thing that makes me uncomfortable. I think as soon as I click run, it's going to start doing things. OWTF does not start doing things right away. So you'll click run, and then it'll say, okay, what do you want to run? And then it brings up this list of plugins. There's a grand total of 137 entries. And you'll see they're broken down by code, name, type, group, and then help is like a description of what it is. The code breaks the test down into either the OWASP testing guide. So where OWASP testing guide has cross-site scripting tests, if you want to filter by OWASP-XSS-something, there's a mapping there that'll help you narrow down quickly to just specific tests that you might want to run. The name is a high-level description. The type is where you'll see semi-passive, passive, active. So what I would encourage everyone to do who actually, you want to fire up this tool and play around with it, go in, pick your target, and I'm teaching a class next, like in 2 weeks in Orlando, InfoSec World. I love OSINT gathering, folks. I love it more and more the more time I spend with it, and tools like ReconNG and Discover, and there's some really fantastic things that people are doing with OSINT right now. I am of the opinion that if it's on the internet, it's fair game for open source intelligence gathering. And Dave, who did the open source security assessment of healthcare.gov, when that site went live, I think he'd back me up there. Don't scan anything where you might break something, but any of these passive tests, you can run those all day against anybody because that information is publicly available. So your own organization, maybe a client that you're going to be working with later in the year, this tool will pick their website and run the passive tests to see what information comes back there. But in here, you'll use that search button to filter your results, and then you just check the test you want to run. And after that, when you click the launch button, there are two options: launch individually, launch in groups. I haven't used it enough in different engagements to see value one over the other. That's for you to figure out as your own testing. But as soon as you click launch, that's when it's going to go out, start talking to whatever back-end resources or target applications it has in mind to get that information. More information on the plugins. Quick note on this one, analyzing the results. When you see the results in the tool. If the tool has generated any output that resides on disk on your testing machine, you can use the tool to jump right to it. It's easy enough to find if you know where you're looking, but if you're just trying to figure out, oh, it says there might be a SQL injection flaw on this contact form, I want to tell my devs about that. Let me go ahead and get like the SQL map data and then flip that into the bug tracking system. Quick way to get what you need to get to. And then if you are a developer, if you do a lot of web work, if you want to show the testers the HTTP conversation, right? I'm drawing a blank on what the word is. Oh, request and response. It's right there. It's got all that information, right? So you can go in and see what was in the headers when I made the call, what came back. It lets you save out your analysis, lets you apply criteria. You might flag something as critical because within your organization, any kind of injection flaw in a particular app is a big deal, but the tool might call it like a high. So it gives you the ability to put your notes in the tool. If you want to use that piece, again, this is really a workflow question, but I haven't used it that much. It's just nice that it's in there. You've got more options around filtering. It logs what it does, so you can go in and see the information on the back end. And it's got this concept of workers and work lists. So you can, and this is above and beyond what I've done with the tool so far, but if you're doing a bigger app or something where when you try it, it takes like the first run takes 3 days, you can toy around with how many threads you want to allot to certain tests, certain plugins. And it helps you move more quickly through the testing. So all this, the managing workers, managing work lists, for your first run doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Over time, as you start to build efficiencies into your process, this is where you would do it. But this is the piece this is where it gets useful to me. So I want to talk, again, workflow. You're going to plug your target URLs in, click Run, select your plugins, analyze the scan results, and then in the scan results, I'll show you some of this in a minute, you can jump out of the web UI to a command line interface, validate the results, run the tools, look at the results from those tools, and generate any additional output that you need. Put your notes back in the UI, generate the report. That's your beginning to end. If you are using this, you get past that first run and you say, yeah, we could use this here. I could start doing pen tests with this, or I could show my developers some of this, but I don't want to show them everything because they're not security professionals. They're developers. They have security as a responsibility, but they don't want to do all the fun stuff with this that I want to do. I have 3 recommendations for you that are going to bring immediate value from multiple perspectives, security and compliance. First thing, excuse me, if you filter the plugins, so you plug in your targets, you click Run, and it says, all right, what plugins do you want to use? If you use the term SSL, or the string SSL, or the string TLS, you're going to get 4 tests that come back, these 4 right here. I recommend that you check each of these and that you run them. You may know, like, how many of you use Qualys SSL Labs? Anybody? I mean, it's a nice little free tool that Qualys has out there that lets you vet how secure your SSL TLS config is. Every PCI anybody who comes knocking at your door is going to run that against your e-com sites. And they're going to use it because it's low-hanging fruit for them to call out. You may or may not want your information about internal websites published out there if it's a pre-production. And if it's an internal application that's not external facing, you can't use tools like that. Or Observatory, which if you've not checked out Mozilla's Observatory tool, it's Qualys and then some. So it gets into like some HTTP header security, some stuff that Qualys just doesn't intend to get into. But if you've ever used SSLize, it's like a local tool that does some of the same. That's one of the tools under the hood that you can point this against a website. But the short version, run all 4 of the SSL TLS tests to make a determination whether or not you have appropriately built out the encryption in traffic for your web application. What's the new one? Robot? Does anybody know? I don't know a whole lot about this. It's the robot vulnerability in SSL TLS, which when you see it, you think, oh, it's the robots.txt call out that I don't care about. No, if you see robot on a web app report, take a closer look. I can't speak to it myself, but I do know that Qualys is already starting to find it in their SSL TLS, their SSL Labs thing. And what they're telling people is, hey, if you've got this on your website right now, no big deal, but we're going to start flagging it as an F in July of 2018. Which means if you have that vulnerability in your external-facing PCI websites, you're going to start failing those quarterly scans. This stuff baked in lets you do all that in-house without exposing any internally. Test for cross-site scripting. The string you're going to want to use, spell it out, no hyphens, cross space site space scripting. You'll get 6 tests, DOM-based, reflected, stored, all the big ones. You'll also get cross-site flashing. This is good from a social engineering perspective, right? It's not, with cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, it's rare, right? It's difficult to exploit them in a way that impacts things on the back end. Cross-site scripting tends to be targeted at your users. So it's really putting your users at risk and not that it's going to result in a breach necessarily. But with that said, they've got 6 tests built in that you can test for there. And if you search on injection, not SQL injection, just injection, you're going to get 12 tests here. To me, this is one of the biggest values that I've found in the OWASP testing guide. I had a client I was working for years ago that had some really sharp people doing app dev, security minded, and they were a Drupal shop. And so they had part of their app was commercial off the shelf, and then they were using Drupal to augment functionality. And I found through what was it? It was a command injection vulnerability that they introduced unknowingly in that custom code that I could bypass all the front end stuff and go to the back end. Command injection is a bigger deal to me than SQL injection, but SQL injection is one of the most common attack vectors, especially if your application processes data on the back end. The bigger deal about the other injection-based attacks, like command injection, if you get pushback and they say, well, I don't care if they compromise the database, it's just a zip code lookup. That's public information. So what? Not a big deal. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not worried about the SQL injection of them pulling the data out. I'm worried about them sneaking a command in through the web app interface and running commands on the servers to open up additional ports or create user accounts, or use that server as a pivot point to attack every other system on our internal network. So just look for injection flaws, and you'll get these 12 tests. If we could just do that, go to your web app developers, give them this free tool that's rock simple to install and use, and say, hey, we want to test 3 things: encryption of data in transit, cross-site scripting, and SQL injection. At that point, folks, you have the foundation for an effective application security program. There's a lot more to build on after that, but that's some quick wins. That's a fast way to figure out whether or not you have some pretty high-risk exposures. And it gets us to a point that they say, wow, application security testing can really be this simple? The fix is still going to be a pain in the butt. But to find out that I have this weakness or exposure, and I didn't have to go fight for budget to get this big commercial off-the-shelf tool, this is the kind of stuff that moves your application security program forward. So the last things I wanted to talk through before I bring up the VM. When I installed it, I was using Kali 2017.2. The version of Kali I'm going to bring up is 2017.2. There have been 2 releases, I think, since then, 2017.3 and 2018.1. So I know when I installed it, I had to install W3AF to get the full functionality. So a quick git clone of the GitHub repo And then you also had to, I had to put pip. So easy install, upgrade pip. And then there's, what is it? When you pull down W3AF, there's a whole set of dependencies that you need to make W3AF work on Kali. So there's a little toying around that I had to go through to get to that point. But like I said, I've not used the 2018.1. And if you use another Linux distro, like if you're using Samurai, you might have some of this stuff already baked in and it works just fine. But I wanted to share that experience. And then my user experience has been a little buggy. But I'm not bitching because it's a free tool built on open source tech. It does a lot of amazing stuff. I'm just saying that first run of the tool, I occasionally bump into a 500 error. What I've done is I've just either reinstalled the tool or moved everything over to a different directory and fired it up again. And I don't like to use the default session. When you go into the tool, you can create sessions based on engagements, based on, whatever your preference is for organizing your work. Don't use the default session for anything. What I found is you create your own. It tends to be a little more stable. But keep in mind too that if you keep running different scans against the same application, you might also overwrite some of the data that you created initially. So you're creating sessions based on iterative testing might do it for you. But again, I'm not a developer. Every chance I have where I'm in a room with developers who are security-minded, security-invested, hit up the people who are on this project. If you have anything you can offer back. The people at CodeMesh said, Jerod, I had one guy chime in, so if I run a test and they fix it, can I run just another something to let me know whether or not they really fixed it the way the developer said they fixed it? I don't think the tool has that functionality, but that would be a sexy feature to add to it. That's instant value that the developers who you're trying to connect with, the people that you're trying to work with, they're going to love that because that takes their workflow and simplifies it. It takes their process without adding unnecessary overhead. So if you've got the skills and you've got the time, contributing back to this project can help everybody who has application security responsibilities. So my recommendations for you, you know what? Let me jump out. Let me go ahead and use this point to show you. Where is it? There we go. Show you what it looks like. So I mentioned first run. I pulled up the CodeMesh website. I did run. I ran a few passive scans just to see what information would come back. And after you've run some scans, you would just come into here, and it's going to organize the findings based on that OWASP testing guide. So I was looking at HTTP methods. I want to see if I can interact with the web server itself, which isn't so much an application security concern as it is more that middleware. Whose job was it to install and configure Apache or IIS? Did they miss anything? Did they leave anything turned on? I just wrapped up a pen test right before I made the move to the company I'm with now, and I found 4 IIS 6.0 web servers on the internet at this company. Now, they had done something on the back end. It was me and one other pen tester, and we came at those servers 6 ways from Sunday and couldn't get in. But I've worked with other clients who, as soon as you've got a tech that old that's internet facing, it's like flies in honey. You're attracting people who would have no desire to look at your organization otherwise, except for the fact that they found old technology on your internet facing systems and have a higher level of confidence that they can get in by exploiting an older vulnerability. So I pulled some stuff back about their the web server configuration. I didn't see anything there that that appeared to be really handy. I ran the test against the, so there's God, is it Zap that does this? Like a spidering tool, not Durbuster, but just looking, how many web pages can I find, right? I'm going to try to spider the website. Quickest way to spider a website, well, not quickest, right? Sitemap.xml. If the developers have published a sitemap, you can just go there and see all the web pages that might be accessible. Or the best place for a web app pen tester to start, the robots.txt file. What do we store in the robots.txt file? Sorry? Exactly. All the web pages you don't want users to visit. You pull up the robots.txt file and you see disallow WP-admin. What does that tell you? It's a WordPress site, which means there's a whole world of attack options available. So I want to say here, come on. How do I shrink this? All the things I can do. I get up here and I do these tests. Can I minus it? Nope. No luck. Let me jump back up there. That's going to make this next one tough. I'll see if I can work it out. You can see that we've got the different types of tests, like passive, semi-passive. In the robots.txt, which I was trying to pull up, but I've got my monitor all wonky up here. I found that they did have on this website the disallow for the WP admin. Yeah, that's better. So, but the test had to be semi-passive. In order for the scanner to read the robots.txt file, it had to find it. So as soon as I ran that test, I knew that somebody on the back end, if they were watching my logs and they looked at my the identifier for my browser, my user agent, they would know that I'm coming to robots.txt and I'm not a scanner, I'm not a tool. Well, that's debatable, but it did bring up the content somewhere. Oh, here, it actually saved the robots.txt file. And looking at it, I could see that they were disallowing the WP admin, but they did allow the ajax.php. All right. I get right there. There we go. Ah, shucks. Lost it. All right, bear with me 1 second. Let me see if I can navigate without breaking my neck. All right, don't care about that one. Care about this one. There it is. But one of the other open source tests that I ran was this web application fingerprint. There we go. Where it detected different technologies that it thought might be available on the website. And when it comes from just doing the recon and analysis to jumping into the more targeted analysis, and in some cases some of the exploitation code, if it detects a particular technology, it's going to give you the string for these supporting tools that will give you more detail or more information. So if CodeMash had engaged me as a pen tester to test their website, I would come down here and I would throw these 2 Durbuster commands against their WordPress site to see what I could come up with. And more importantly, because if you've not used WP Scan, it's fantastic. And then here's the command I would need to run WP Scan to enumerate all the plugins that they might have out there. And of course, the tools under the covers, if you do this stuff a lot, you develop your favorites. You have tools that you'll come back to again and again. But this takes you from, I know nothing other than the URL, to I can now share information with my developers to help identify potential security vulnerabilities, or again, their parlance, bugs. And I can introduce application security into our app dev process. And it didn't cost me anything than maybe, beer and pizza, if that's what it takes to get them in the room. There, and so the last thing that I wanted to share out, if you've never hit up the OWASP testing guide, download the release 4 and give it a once over. If you intend to use it, taking all the tests and making a spreadsheet, that's what I did as a starting point, but I'm shifting here. Look at the tests that are relevant. If you've got one app you can test, run your first set of tests, do some of that command line validation, play around with reporting, and talk to your developers, see how you would implement that in the bug tracking system. Just actually give it a go, right? Try this out once. See whether or not it makes sense at your organization. And the resources that I wanted to share out, if OWTF is not your thing, if you look at this and say, Jerod, not exactly what I'm looking for, but thanks anyway, the Gauntlet project, which it's a few years older. If anybody uses Jenkins, right? If you've got a shop where Jenkins is common language internally, start with Gauntlet. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles that OWTF has, but it's got the same concept, same foundation of security automation for application QA. Samurai WTF stands for Web Testing Framework, of course. It's another Linux distro similar to Kali, but it's geared toward web app pen testers. I think it's from the offensive security guys, maybe. But it's a good distro to toy with. Hit up the OWTF YouTube channel a few years ago at BSides London. That's where the project lead debuted the project and shared some of this information out. So you can get he gets into this whole philosophy of the Spartan attacks and the phalanx, and he's very passionate about what he does. OWTF has some information on some online passive scanning. If you're in an environment, especially if it's like an ICS, industrial control system, and any of that active stuff might break or reset, you can just watch traffic. They've got some of that functionality in there. And if you don't have anything production that you can work with, you can still hit up the OWASP Vulnerable Web App project. Stand up deliberately vulnerable web applications in your own VMs, and then run this tool against those apps. So a lot of options to play with, but that's the OWTF. Any questions, comments, discussion? I just happen to have one of those contact slides in here. I tend to be most active on LinkedIn. I like to find stuff on Reddit and then share and see what people have to say about it. But if you want to hit me up, my email, LinkedIn, Twitter, follow, throw me a DM, my GitHub page, and then SlideShare is where I'll put the slides, and then Speaker Deck. If you look for Slondal, it's Irish for security online. That's how to find me. Appreciate your time this morning, folks. Thank you.